So the first question I have for you is how and where did you find wrestling, and in what way would you say it's impacted your life?
Uh, the impacted life thing's going to be that could be a whole day long conversation. Actually, wrestling found me. I'm really unusual. Wrestling found me when I was a year old.
Wow.
Uh, I uh, I had an uncle that broke his neck wrestling, and my family had a choice to make: either run from wrestling or embrace it,
Hmm.
and they embraced it. So, but Fred stayed in a bed in a wheelchair for the next, I guess, was 16, 17 years of his life. And my dad started wrestling or a wrestling team at the Wilkes-Barre YMCA in Pennsylvania. Um, I used to tag along as a little kid, and he wouldn't let those big kids just maul me. There were some really studs in his wrestling room. I mean, from all over the Wyoming Valley and northeastern Pennsylvania. Uh, but one day, just kind of let me get in there, and of course, they just beat the dog out of me. Just had fun. I was like the toy, you know. And I was 5 years old, and uh, it's I don't know. It's just been life for 50, going on 57 years now.
Right.
But it's impact. It's everything I do. Today, I everything I do. I'm on 19 different boards or doing something in different National Wrestling Hall of Fame, Georgia High School, run the tournaments, helping UTC with a scuffle. Of course, the NCAA, briefly talked about that. Just I'm the president of the Metro Atlanta Wrestling Officials Association. It just kind of goes on and on. But it's impacted my life as much as anybody can imagine.
Right. No, and you mentioned all the connections you have to it, through your career and all that starting off with just wrestling in general. And I think that just furthermore proves how it's really a sport that always has never endless connections, in my opinion. Never leaves your life.
That is so true. Look, as wrestlers, everybody should try it. I don't think it is for everybody. I've listened to some of your podcasts. They've been great to hear some of the old friends and things. But I truly think that if no matter where I am in the country, I'm one phone call away from knowing somebody,
Hmm.
a connection. If I'm in trouble and I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota, or Kansas City, or Oklahoma, wherever it is, I truly think if I needed help, there's a friend really close. Wrestling, I call wrestling a cult.
Hmm.
It's a good cult. It's a bunch of great people.
No, absolutely. It is a one of a kind connection. And you mentioned being anywhere in the country or whether it be the world and having a connection to somebody. Jeff Ruffalo, when I interviewed him, kind of mentioned something similar. And he said, there's just something about it. Like, you could go into a new town and meet somebody who say they played basketball, right? And that'd be one thing, right? Well, when somebody says, "Oh, I wrestled," I feel like it ultimately gives you the idea that, hey, this is a tough guy right here.
Absolutely. And they've been through the same thing you've been through. It may be to a lesser degree, but there's just that respect that we all have for each other. I mean, I listened to Jeff. It was really good. And of course,
I
Buckshaw and Rocco, and you've had some great podcasts.
appreciate it.
The my just to touch on it again, just a bit, but one of the main reasons I'm where I am today, when my uncle broke his neck, a gentleman named Warren Tischler
Hmm.
reached out to my dad. My uncle Fred was wrestling on, I don't know, you're really young, but horsehair mats, and they wrinkled. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the international mats now, how they're not real tight.
Right.
But his heel got stuck, and the guy fell on the back of his head when he went to his butt. And of course, that's how he broke his neck. But Mr. Tischler reached out to my dad and asked him, of course, he helped. This Mr. Tischler guy is a pretty amazing guy. He is the founder of what we know today as Res Light Wrestling Mats.
Wow.
But he helped coordinate some stuff, and they bought a band for Fred. Of course, my dad officially wasn't a salesman for him, but back in the early 60s, he was one of the two guys helping him try to get Res Light off the ground. I remember as a 10-year-old going down to that plant and the fumes. and the smell of all those resins and glues. And of course, you know, if I get back up there, which I don't get there enough, but it brings back those memories of being in that plant. But Mr. Tischler, pretty amazing man, and the family still owns the company today. Of course, I cover the Southeast United States for Wrestle.
Right. Well, those Resolite mats, I will say, they're long lasting. You know, we have two of them in our wrestling room up at Signal, and they're definitely very durable, to say the least.
Yeah, and I don't want to get you off track, but I see Signal, you hired one of my favorite wrestlers at UTC all the time, Nico Brown, up there. And what a great guy.
Great addition to an already amazing coaching staff. And you know, we've had him, you know, in these past couple of practices for the off season, and he's a great guy to work with, and really, you know, mat IQ wise, technique wise,
Yeah,
definitely a great addition to our team and to our school and everything.
yeah, good for you guys. I'm happy for you.
Like, and he's looking to start up a kids club as well, so
That's a good thing.
that'll be a big help, and that'll be fun for the future, definitely.
Yeah.
Now, kind of moving on from that first question and kind of going into your college coaching career, what brought you to UTC?
Well, I probably ought to tell you that I quit wrestling when I was in 7th grade because I hated it. I mean, I got to where it was just too much. And a guy named Ed Ladamas, my junior high coach, he taught me how to love it again. And of course, we moved to Georgia in 77, went to Parkview High School, and of course had some more good coaches, not wrestling guys, but really good and cared about kids.
Right.
A guy named Bruce Miller and Roy Massey. But I went to wrestle at Chattahoochee Valley Community College. I hurt my knee pretty bad, believe it or not, playing softball in the summer after my senior year. I thought I was going to go. Well, first I wanted to go to Georgia. They dropped wrestling. Then I really wanted to go to Clarion University in Pennsylvania. Well, when I hurt my knee, I got talking to Coach Stubbe at Chattahoochee Valley, which really, I don't know, God put you in places.
Right.
It's amazing what that did for me. Coach Stubbe's a former New Jersey guy, wrestled at Huntington College, who has brought back their wrestling team. And I got to be roommates with this guy named Charlie Hurd.
Wow.
And really, Charlie was the main reason I was there. Charlie told Coach Stubbe, said, "Man, you got to get Bud down here." And of course, there's a guy named Marty Jannetty. That, you know, those guys were all Americans for us. I don't think I got higher. I think I was ranked 8th. And then I started losing a lot at the end of my freshman year, and I just realized it just wasn't for me. So I just focused on school and helped coach at Parkview High School as a community coach with Coach Massey, and coached my brothers and a guy named Dan Matlack and Dave Daniels and a guy named Tony Herring. And Coach Morgan called me because he was recruiting my brother and a couple of those other guys. And he asked me, he said, "Hey, any chance you'd consider coming up and being an assistant coach?" He had Jim Blair already locked in to work out with Charlie, because Charlie Hurd had transferred up there after Chattahoochee Valley dropped the team after my freshman year and Charlie's freshman year. So I'm sure Charlie had his hand in that too. We were good friends. We roomed together. He was one of the baddest wrestlers I've ever known. I've been around wrestling for a long, long time. That guy was really, really good. I'm sure you've already heard. But Coach Morgan came down, sat down. He recruited me out of high school, and I don't know, Chattanooga just didn't do it for me. Riding by the big heap of metal on the side of the highway going into the school, I don't know what it was. Great guy. I loved Coach Morgan, but he, I don't know, he took all night long. We sat out by mom and dad's pool, and there was a bottle of, I think it was Captain Morgan. He may have gone through that whole bottle. It's like, and a lot of the old timers, anybody that watches this, they'll remember Coach Moore. Great guy. But he convinced me that night to come. Of course, my dad wanted to live vicariously through me, being a former coach and stuff. And I think my dad spent as much time in Chattanooga as I did. But we made the commitment to come up, and I guess officially I came on at the end of '82, which was like before January. I just did a lot of recruiting. Uh,
Right.
that was the year Charlie took second in the NCAA tournament. And I don't know, I stayed on for a year and a half. And then I was doing a wrestling camp in Pennsylvania and got a phone call, said I need to come back to Chattanooga. Coach Morgan was going to move full time in administration, and he wasn't going to coach anymore. So then the search committee began, and they let me have some input on who my next boss was going to be.
Right. And that would turn out to be Ethan Reed, correct?
Yes, it was. Yeah, that was a major change of culture around UTC wrestling, and I heard Ethan talk about it. There just was a lot of discipline. We didn't have a lot of discipline with Coach Morgan. I ran the room somewhat, but it wasn't as structured. Ethan, you knew every 5 minutes what was going to happen. We didn't even need to have a clock or a watch. Everybody knew. You know, we were going from this to this to this, and it was awesome. I mean, really, I was fortunate to get to learn from two of the best.
Right. No, and you mentioned Ethan Reed talking about that structure that he mentioned in the interview, which I found that was incredibly unique, but also one of the very beneficial things that goes into the coaching. And Jeff Ruffalo and Charlie Buckshaw and those other guys talked about it as well. And it was down to the pinpoint on what was going to happen each minute, whether that be 5-10 minutes of stretching and then moving, or like team meeting beforehand, 5-10 minutes of stretching, drilling, etc. It was all laid out, and everything that he laid out had a benefit behind it.
Yeah, there was a reason for every minute of every practice. I mean, it was really good for everybody that hung through it and made it work. Right. I truly think our guys got to be as good as they possibly could be. And Ethan, he cut out a lot of the things that were, kind of that college life these guys liked. I'll never forget the day we were sitting up in the office in McKenzie, and Ethan said, "Hey, let's go up to Scrappy's." Of course, I had a pretty good idea. It was after practice, and some of our guys were at Scrappy's. Some of these guys will get a good laugh at this now. It wasn't funny back then. Scrappy's was up at the end of, I guess it's 5th Street at the top of the hill where the police department is there now, campus.
Okay.
They didn't have any really like windows and everything. There were guys sitting in the windows up on the 2nd floor, and we could see them walking up the road. I'm thinking, this is just going to be so ugly. It's like, and I'll never forget, Ethan went through there and said, "Get out of here, get out of here." He goes in the bathroom and looks up under the stall, and there's some guys standing up on the toilet. I mean, they're scared to death of him. I mean, it was really funny. But he, of course, my youngest brother who came on that year, Rick, he was one of them standing on the toilet. And Ethan Hennebaul, go get your gear on and stuff. And there was a piece of plywood laying against the wall. There were like 3 guys got behind that plywood so he couldn't see him. So Rick kicks the plywood and says, "Hey, come on, guys, he caught us." And so, needless to say, some of the guys just put the beat down on Rick for that. But there were some really fun times. It's great to laugh. But Ethan, he was on a mission. I mean, he was gonna make everybody as good as they could be, and he did.
No, absolutely. I mentioned that team through the mid '80s up until through the '90s and etc. That was really a truly legendary team for UTC, and especially when you look at when Buckshaw was there, and I believe was it 88 or 89 when they beat Clemson in the duel?
Actually, we beat Clemson before that. I thought we beat them short the second year Ethan was there, but yes, the UTC became a powerhouse in the South back then. When you mentioned Buckshaw, I'll never forget sitting in that office that night, and I was calling recruits, and of course, it's, "Well, coach, I'm looking at this school," and everybody wanted to go to those big schools. And when Charlie called, I mean, we were so excited trying to get him before he decided to be a college football player. I thought, man, we got to get him in here. It's hard to find good big guys, right? And I'm a little bit of bigger guy, and you know, and I was so happy when he came. Of course, I remember the bus trip and things like that, and
24-hour bus.
kind of, I'm telling you, I kind of remember some things like that where, you know, Charlie's mom, I think it was Ben Reichel's mom, probably Ruffalo's too. They were concerned that they'd come down to school down here and they wouldn't come home. Well, I didn't lie to any of them. We moved down here from Pennsylvania. There was no need for me to ever go back. You know, it's beautiful. Chattanooga is such a beautiful city, and the South is, it's just a great place to live.
Well, especially now, like you look at the transformation of the city from 20, 30 years.
Yes.
You know, my dad, my mom, who both grew up in Chattanooga, said the difference is just, you know, crazy.
It's amazing. I mean, I think we had something really nice to recruit. You know, the city really, when I got there, it was much better than when I was coming out of high school. And it just has continued. I mean, people coming from the scuffle, you know, with the other teams, they like coming to Chattanooga. It's a great place. It's a beautiful city. My wife went to school up there, and it was kind of, I mean, we've talked about, yeah, we'd love to retire there, or actually just move back there, but we never made it. You know, I mean, my company that hired me out of Wisconsin, that I was a regional sales manager for a window and door manufacturer for about 16 years. And one of the priorities was being next to an airport that was pretty inexpensive to fly around the country. And Chattanooga didn't offer that unless I wanted to get in a groom type thing. But Chattanooga is an awesome place. I love Chattanooga.
No, it's a great city, and the city's continuing to grow at a massive rate, you know, through the next coming years. And I'll be excited to see the changes that are brought to it. But kind of still staying on that UTC wrestling topic, this is just out of curiosity. During that time of the mid 80s, you know, and the 90s, when you had those aforementioned wrestlers that we talked about earlier, just what were the practices like when it comes to like intensity and just kind of overall with Reeve and then that group of wrestlers in there?
Wow. The intensity was amazing. Ethan had this philosophy about not cracking, you know, and constant pressure. And, you know, and I'll never forget the day where Tom Sell and Mark Allison, I believe we were just drilling. We're doing pressure drills. And Tom had Mark backed up against the wall. And he wasn't, I mean, till the whistle blew, he didn't stop. And we used to call Tom Duracell. And he was amazing. I mean, I remember a kid at Clemson just saying, "Hey, I'm done." Guy was beating him, and guy wanted to quit, and he ended up beating him. But it was because of what came out of that room. Everybody worked hard. I mean, when you left that room, I mean, you didn't have enough energy to go get in trouble. That's what I used to think. I mean, but that day when Tom had Mark backed up against the wall, Mark just started punching him in the face. Blood's coming out. He's still wrestling. Right? It's like and Ethan looked at me, and from what I recall, it was, I like it. You know, it's like, you know, Tom wasn't, he was still in a great stance, and, you know, of course, Mark was cracked, but it helped. It helped everybody, and, you know, guys were wide-eyed, but it was so intense. You know, we got up and did the morning workouts, and Ethan brought some things into the room, like this. I don't even know what the name is. I've asked Ethan what the name was before. It worked on Ethan focused a lot on your hamstrings and your butt and your lower back and things. We had these Russian type machines that we used to have girls walk in the office wanting us to introduce some of our wrestlers because their butts look so good. That's like, and I remember those days too. But yeah, it was tough. You were always doing something in that room. There was no sitting around.
Well, the determination and toughness, I feel like that room, from what you described, Bill is one of a kind, because you look at the the stories, and when I interviewed Thornberry and when I was talking to Buckshaw, he mentioned this. Was it Thornberry's junior year where he was wrestling right after surgery on his foot?
On his toe. Yeah, and actually, I wasn't there then. I was living down in Florida. I left after Ethan's second year, moved to Florida. Of course, Beverly is from Jacksonville. I thought, well, I'm going to get down there and get away from wrestling. I probably got farther into it. But yeah, I believe it was Chris's junior year. Chris is another one. I think he mentioned it on the podcast. We stayed on these guys. When we were recruiting them, we wanted them to know how much we cared about them. I'll never forget that Marist football game after the semifinals. They got beat. I went down, stood on the fence, and make sure I got to him. I wanted to get to him before his mom and dad got to him. And I just said, "Hey, I can't wait to see you wearing that blue and gold." And he said, "Yeah, it's time." So Chris was he was a tough dude. He and Buckshaw really pushed each other. Ethan always talks about the champions come in pairs. You got to push each other, and that is one of the truest things in wrestling.
Well, iron sharpens iron, and I think it's as important as anything in this sport. One of the big factors is to have a really good practice partner that you're able to push each other to their limits and really build off one another to perform out there, under the lights on the mat.
Right. If you don't have a good practice partner and they're not pushing you, you need to go find somebody else.
Absolutely.
I mean, truly, that's about as simple as it is.
Well, kind of going into our last question here and wrapping up. Overall, with the experience in wrestling, the business connections, and everything of that nature, how do you think over the years wrestling has changed?
Wow. It's changed a lot, probably a lot more from the rules standpoint. Of course, we have all kinds of crazy, and I say crazy things. Everybody's always trying to make wrestling better. And then at the same time, I say it's changed a lot. The women's wrestling is, I would say is helping us drastically in our sport. If we can just get the funding, get people to support it. I mean, I see school systems down in Florida, people are knocking out walls, and we're putting in bigger wrestling rooms because they have a girls team now, and that's happening. It's happening at a rapid rate, and I think it's helping us grow it back up. I mean, before COVID, man, we were at record numbers. I mean, wrestling was improving. I think 2013 or 14, high school wrestling had been in decline for probably 5 or 6 years. And it was on a continual upgrade. Of course, parents didn't want their kids, they didn't want to take a chance of getting sick. And I think they were trying to keep them away, which is understandable. But it's, things like wearing shorts when you wrestle instead of singlets. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of that. And, having long hair, old school guys like me, it's like, dang, what are you doing? And of course, I remember coming to the Tennessee tournament, Mark Reeves invited me up, and of course it was part of that COVID situation you and I talked about a little while ago. But seeing some of the mullets in Tennessee, some of those guys really work hard at that stuff. And but back in our day, man, you had that hair cut short. Of course, I'm still high and tight, but I don't know. All the scrambling around, I worry about what some of these guys are going to be like. I just got out of the doctor's office yesterday. It's like surgery, and I can't imagine what it'd be like today for me or my wrestling partners and things if the rules with the scrambling things going on with our knees and things. I'm concerned about what these guys are going to be like when they're 50 years old, because I don't know, it's a tough sport, and you stay in there and man up and just, and fight through those situations. But it's changed, but it's still the best sport in the world.
Absolutely. No, I think, and it kind of reiterating what Rocco Mansueto said when I first interviewed him, and I think it was an excellent point, is that if a kid ever wants to try a sport, I think the sport should be wrestling. Like you mentioned, it's not for everybody, but just that experience is one of a kind, and it's undoubtedly one of the hardest sports out there in the world. and it shapes you more than just as an athlete. It shapes you as a person in a very unique way.
You're exactly right. And look, and I interviewed and hired with many people over the years, and I would hire a wrestler over somebody that didn't wrestle in a heartbeat. And I got that one job. I was down to the final three candidates company in Wisconsin. The owner wasn't a wrestler, but all of his buddies were. And he told me, he said, "You're probably not the most qualified, but I'm giving you the job because I know wrestlers will get their butt up, get to work, and get the job done." And in times like that, there's so many of these times in my life that I realized, man, if it wasn't for wrestling, where would I be? But that, of course, we had a real successful run until 2008. But yeah, wrestling, it's better to have wrestled and lost than not have wrestled. I mean, wrestling, losing helps you, right? Because life's not
Absolutely.
fair. Yeah.
Well, it's something that's inevitable, throughout life, and the adversity that it teaches you, at a young age, you're going through adversity almost every weekend, maybe every Tuesday, Thursday, or every practice. You never know.
Or every practice. Yeah. Yeah. Look, you just get up and dust yourself back up. Hey, look, we're going to fail all through life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and the failure may not be you. It's just somebody may be better than you, but you got to get back up, and tomorrow's another day, and the sun's going to come up. And, and the other part of that is we'll always have our wrestling friends. I've watched Rocco, that was awesome. I remember Rocco coming down, he and Jay and I, which Jay's my son, that was the manager at UTC for 4 years for Esslinger. Jay, we went with Rocco, we took him out, and Jay's high school coach, we went out to Augusta National, watch a practice round. And then Hatcher came down with us and went to watch a UGA football game because he said, "Hey, I'd like to see what that's like." But just, we do things away from wrestling. And like Ruffalo has said, we picked maybe 35 years, but we pick right back up where we left off.
Absolutely.
And never lose touch with your wrestling friends. I mean, obviously, I think you're going in your junior year in high school.
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah. Well, we're pulling for you, right?
Thank you.
I'd like to get up and see you wrestle sometime. But but you're a wrestler, so you're part of the fraternity.
Thank you. I appreciate it. No, it's a one of a kind community, and you mentioned Ruffalo, and I feel like I bring this up at the Southern Scuffle this past year. I got to sit down and talk with Ruffalo and John Feldhacker.
Yeah.
And just the camaraderie that was there. It's almost like we all went to school together. And they were getting ready to graduate college about 30, 35 years before I was born. And that's right. The crazy thing to me.
And those two were a big part. John, of course, ended up, he was a captain, a really successful wrestler, but those two were two of the big parts that were the glue that kept together that we were able to keep together when Ethan transitioned in. I mean, they stuck in there and really did well with it. But yeah, the scuffle, and I want to make sure, hey, Chattanooga, the community in Chattanooga is fantastic about helping and making that thing the success it is today. And Dr. Jay Blackman and Mark Wharton, I've been very fortunate that they've let me be a part of that. And we try to run it like the NCAA D1 tournament as best we can. But yeah, we want you to help. Come, I'll keep your contact stuff, and just, we want you to come down there and help us out, because our hospitality in Chattanooga is one of the things that the coaches bring up all the time about how much they like the people of Chattanooga.
Well, I would be more than happy to help. It'd be an awesome opportunity, and I'm all for it.
Okay, sounds great. I really appreciate you doing these things.
Thank you. I appreciate you joining me.
It's brought back so many good memories and things, and I've talked to my brothers and people that we need to get involved. And like David Weeks, there's actually a group that was a really great time in UTC wrestling prior to all this. The Randy Battens and the John Calvalodges and the Turner Jacksons, and it goes on. Matter of fact, David Weeks is having a get together July 3rd up on the lake, and there's a bunch of people asking, "Hey, can you go? Can you go?" And trying to get John Calvalodge's wife Nancy, see if she'll go up there with us. But it's just that it's a family. If it wasn't for UTC, I wouldn't be. Who knows where I'd be? I'd be very disappointed. That I could tell you. But it's opened up so many doors for me, and like I said, I really appreciate you doing this.
Well, it's a one of a kind family, and thank you for joining me. It's been awesome to get to interview you and talk wrestling and much more. And I hope all's well, and look forward to seeing you hopefully around time for the Southern Scuffle.
I'll hopefully see you soon. You take care and have a great day.
All right, thank you. You as well.
All right, Mason.